That's probably what it. What we're gonna work here tonight, one whole budget meeting. Something along with silent practice. It's burning.
Mr. Chairman, I spoke with Mr. Bernard earlier today. He indicated that there's no need for the board of the NRD.
So, any questions for the county manager on the
He did say that they've been doing the informal process across from his office, so if residents have it, it would be recommended to go there and file their submission. And then we'll let you know if they have any scheduled.
All right, so we'll just skip that and we'll let you take over kind of managing the budget, start budget, right? Move forward.
Did you want to just jump right in, or did you want to leave the minutes?
Yeah, whatever.
All right, so you have your packet in front of you. I'm just gonna do a little more formal than normal process on the presentation of the recommended budget. So if you open your books, the first pages are your message. I don't know that I'm gonna go through all of that right now, but I would recommend that you read the message. It talks about the priorities and the process. And so if you go to the first slide. So I can see it. All right, so the general fund with our recommended budget is right at 36,141,000. And the proposed tax rate is 65.35 cents, which gives us a total overall budget of 42,755,000. If you go to the next slide, the county tax rate comparisons. So only two counties in the region actually did a reval this year. That would be us and Rockingham County, who we're adjacent to. So the Rockingham proposed rate increase is 7 cents. Well, they've already adopted. I believe these are all adopted. Is that right? So then if you look at the others, they do not have a reval year. So this is just their recommended tax increase for this year with their accompanying budget. So our theory was to add in the 2 cents from the school district tax that had not been it's not been allocated and collected since the passage of the referendum, which was 3 years ago. And that was roughly 2 cents. So that puts us at a mill rate on this budget recommended at 6.85 cents. So go ahead and go to the next page. So the overview, I'm going to go through your economic considerations, the general fund revenues, some of our long-term financial stability issues that we addressed, the fund balance, where that sits without the audit being completed, the general fund expenditures and how we work through our recommendation, the budget development goals, and the conclusion. So the economic conditions, inflation and employment have been a big deal the last several years. However, unemployment in the county is almost at an all-time record low. It's only at 3.5%. So that's extremely low for conditions. And the CPI has dropped back down from where it was a high in June of 2022. So these are all fiscal conditions that contribute to the county standing. If you go to the next one, so our property valuation that everybody received it hasn't been done in 8 years. So that's for an 8-year period, it's 41%. And in that same time frame, the median household income in Caswell County has gone up 46%. So basically, you're looking at two factors that go into the economic standing of the county and its residents. Next slide. So striving for long-term financial stability. Recurring expenditures are funded with recurring revenues. So we can't continue to have operating expenses above our revenue generation or our sustained sources. We're trying to have an adequate fund balance to target a safe recommended policy, which we have not adopted formally yet. And the fund balance use needs to be for capital long-term big projects, not for operating. If you align the budget with our operational goals, that's how we came up with our recommendation. The property valuation rate. So if you can see that since fiscal year 17, obviously we haven't changed that, hasn't been revalued. Not to be political on it, but 41% for an 8-year period is actually what most places see annually. Charlotte, places like within the state of North Carolina, that's 41% is actually, I moved here from other states where, in 10 years, it goes up 1,000%. That doesn't mean, but our market currently, 41% is kind of on the low end for the counties in the region. Some of them this year saw 80%. And then if you look at our accompanying property tax rate, back in 2017, it was actually a little higher than it currently is. And then in 2018, they dropped it down. And then it's been sustained at that 73.5 cents until where it's at today. So our recommended drop, the reval and the budget neutral is at 58.5 cents. So our recommendation is 68.5. So our budget goals, our budget development goals, number one is our recruitment and retention of staff. There's been extreme turnover, continuity, having vacancies in department heads, having vacancies in staffing. It does help our budget, but it doesn't help with our continuity of training, providing services, and it's something that is a main priority to the county, to me. The responsible tax rate, again, with that 8-year lag of having no adjustments and no reval, it's important to have a responsible tax rate that provides the services and taxation that keeps us sustainable and moving forward. We do want to limit the reliance on fund balance for recurring expenditures only. So it's also important when we look at the fund balance to not have a large fund balance and then ask for a tax increase. It's got to be a proportionate usage of those two tools. And then, of course, the maintenance of our facilities. A lot of our equipment and our buildings and facilities are quite aged. So it's important to, paving, doing the painting, and HVAC seems to be a common theme with all of our entities. So working on those systems to keep their buildings operating in a good working order is important. So our general fund revenues, as you can see from that, the 41% is from property taxes and 20.3% generally comes from the sales tax. The other larger piece is that intergovernmental restricted, which is things like CAPS, DSS, some of the larger departments operate on state and federal funding. And then, of course, as a whole, that's pretty healthy. So the recommended general fund revenue is $36,141,000. If you go to the next slide, it's the sales tax history. So each of those bars there represents the different annual projected and estimates. So if you go through the articles, Article 39, Article 40 at the bottom, 43, the sales tax expansion. The only tax that hasn't increased is the medical hold harmless. So that had us actually do an estimation lower than the previously scheduled estimation. That's generally the only one that's decreased. Do you want to add anything about that, John? No? Just keep rolling.
I can ask questions.
Yeah, when I get through all of these, we'll take questions on the status and all that. So the projected fund balance. which is our next page. So as you know, we have not closed out the 22 or the 23 audit. We're extremely close to having that ready to present to you. But without having that formally completed, we have to go off of estimates and accruals of where we sit with our financing system. So if you look at the budgeted to actual, the 2021 are real numbers that we have audited, and the 22, 23 and 24 are not. So obviously our actual estimation is extremely high for 2023. But if you look at the variance, the variance is going for the base. So our end fund balance for the year, if you look to the right on the blue numbers, the dollars, our total fund balance, that includes restricted funds. So not all of the funds are unrestricted or like general fund and operationally usable. So our fund balance overall is pretty healthy, but a lot of those are restricted and already obligated, not really available dollars to use. So our unassigned fund balance in 2023, it looks extremely healthy at $10 million, which is about 28%. And a good rule of thumb is the state recommends we have 8% in those funds. We're trying to give you a budget that keeps that around 20%, which is a healthy, kind of a good target to shoot for. So with the usage of this budget, the thing I'd like to point out on the 2025 recommendation is there's about $1.1 million in DSS that's obligated in that reserve amount, but not likely to be touched. And so realistically, you're looking at, for those capital one-time obligations being right around where they've been for 2022 and 23. And that still keeps us at an 18.1% on a slightly larger budget. So the percentages change as your budget grows. Next slide. So obviously, to give you a balanced budget, your expenditures have to match your revenues. So that expenditure amount is 36,141 as well. And if you look, public safety and human services takes up over half of our budget. And if you go into the education and some of the other services, they're broken out there by function. Just try to overview this and then we'll go back and get questions. Next slide. So this is by category. So if you look at categorically, over half of the county's budget is salaries. It's about 53.2%. So anytime you do an adjustment, that has a big impact with the county, which is hard. It's probably the hardest one to adjust. Education is 12.8% of our budget. It's the second largest portion of our budget. And then you get into the contractual services and debt service. Our debt service is actually pretty minimal for a county. But that's also probably the case when we haven't been compliant on audits and the ability to take on debt to do bigger projects. The education funding on the next slide. So we calculated the per pupil funding. This budget, they're looking at about $1,372 per student. And the increased funding for capital outlay is the $312,500, which is the ask that they asked for in capital. And it keeps the 24 budget to keep us balanced. So that's probably something we'll want to hear from the agency on that. And then the community college, they increased slightly, $157,000 in this year's ask. That's because they have an HVAC issue as well. I tried to look into their estimates because it felt high, but it was the same contractors that we've been getting estimates from. It feels pretty reasonable. So that keeps them pretty much at where they had their budget last year. On the fire districts, the calculation with their budget neutral rate, this proposes an increase. It's pretty small. It's 0.0063 of a cent tax increase, which puts them right at 3 cents to operate. And then it shows their corresponding revenues. Their breakout, as you probably understand, is from property taxes, sales taxes, motor vehicle fees, and transfers from the general fund of 3%, which is about $30,000. So that keeps them whole and healthy as well. So our next page is the special appropriations. So the Milton Renaissance Foundation is not doing an event this year. They don't have a request. In the green, you see the recommended amounts. And in the 2025 is their recommended request that they submitted, which I emailed those out and you should have all of those to look over and review. So that's a net impact of roughly 21,000 above fiscal year 25. Total budget on the next page. So when you combine all of the budgets, that's where we come up with the 42,755,000. And on the far right, you can see your change in proportion. So the red numbers are decreases in budget. Family services, emergency telephone fund, and tax agency fund are all decreased. There's no change to fines and forfeiture agency funds. And then you can see the general fund with sub funds cumulatively before you get into the transfers and all of the funding mechanisms. It was $3.8 million. Our original request from all departments and entities was at about 32-cent tax increase. So we worked to refine that down to the 6 cents. So next steps, after we finalize and go over these topics, our budget work session is scheduled for June 10th, which is a week from today. Our vendor is there working on the sound system again this week. They had some issues. That's why we're not over there. I anticipate potentially being there next week. I'll let you know before we get to that stage. If we are, by the 17th, we will be in that facility at the start of the house. So we do have the public hearing advertised for June 17th. We sent the notice out. And adoption is the 17th as well, but that can be tabled and postponed if we have changes or things that we want to address. So we can always have a special meeting and not adopt that meeting. But because of the time shift, we only have a lot of available time to do all those things done. So I think that's it on the overview. I did want any citizens are watching or people want to go to these, the proposed budget, the budget message, this presentation, all of that's on our website on the homepage. So please review that and look that over. Spend a lot of time and effort, and I'm hoping I feel exceptionally good that these are accurate and correct, and spend a lot of time and effort with the departments and the requests. And I feel very strongly about this recommendation. But like all budgets, it's the proposed budget. So as we work into those details, we take input and we'll go with the decision making on those areas. I want to put a big shout out to Donna Sharp. Since Thursday, I would estimate she's helped me work approximately 50 hours since Thursday. And that's not to talk about all the long weekends and other additional hours that she has helped as the consultant from the Managers Association. And she's been a huge help to our team, and I can't thank her enough. But I also appreciate, having been in Wake County, her professionalism and knowledge of these topics. It's really important that we have a good budget and we make sure that the taxpayers and the citizens are moving in a constructive manner and not being overtaxed, but also not putting them in a tradition where we get down the road further and have to have a large tax increase. So I think I'll go back to my seat, and if we want to go over any of the materials, I do recommend that because you're just receiving this, go home, make notes, reach out to me, send me questions, send me emails if you want department heads, if you want the school district, college. And the 10th is going to be a busy night. If we need more breakouts after that, we can definitely set that up. So
This is the exact same one you showed us. Okay.
yes, sir. As on the website.
There was one minor tweak. I found something. It's just on the general fund summary page. there was a mathematical error. So other than the recommended budget summary, it is the same.
Well, I went over it pretty good cover. I got a couple of questions. Going through this, looking at this stuff, you're saying 4% cost of living increase, correct?
Are you talking about the salaries? So what I want to do on that, my recommendation would be is there's 700, so a 4% increase is $800,000 for the whole county employee base. And I would recommend a $700,000 earmark. And that we do a salary compensation adjustment and look at, we have disparity between different department heads, different staffs, different people in the same job. That can't just be done overnight. And I don't mean to keep tasking Donna, but from the association, she's done 3 other counties. Some of them have as many as 7 different tiered programs within those counties. And I think looking at that and making adjustments where the adjustments are needed for employees that are far undervalued or under market makes a lot more sense than just doing a flat 4%.
All right, so basically you're saying this right here does not include those salary adjustments within themselves.
It does have the 700,000 earmarked into that, but I'm suggesting that if that's adopted and approved, that we do the studies and bring that back before this body to look at that information and approve whether or not that gets done.
So the reason I asked it is because you ever finish 4 on your notes, go down paragraph 3, it states the goal is to replace those standard adjustments of 4% during the year. To develop recommendations to be brought back to consideration of the key adjustment for funding. But that's telling me some people can get raises, some people may not get.
Correct. So when they do an analysis, and I don't want to speak for John because she does a lot of these. When you do compensation analysis, if you look at it, it's easy to explain department heads. So in the hierarchy of organizations, you have a common placement. The manager, the attorney, the finance director, HR director. There's a normalcy to the payouts, and some of those have a lot of disparity. But that goes all the way down to the lowest level of funding for our employees. So by doing every employee and looking at the data from multiple counties and our region and what they pay, we can figure out like the ones that are severely deficient. But the other side of that is our compression. We have a lot of people that have been here for 10, 12, 15 years that are getting paid what our brand new hires make in those positions. And I think by coming back to you with stronger suggestions of where that is impactful, it's a better use of that funding than just doing a flat 4%.
The reason I'm asking, some of these departments, the salary is not changed that much, and some of them, and I mean, I'm just gonna put it out there. Because when I see big numbers, it throws a flag. Sheriff's office salaries, they went up 331,366.
Commissioner Rose, I can address that.
Okay.
In the 2024 budget was the first year that we used the convention of budgeting a vacancy rate. And in the sheriff's budget for 2024, we had a vacancy rate estimate of 400,000. Based on the sheriff's current staffing levels, it does not appear that that is sustainable. So that increase in the sheriff's budget line is purely a result of changing the vacancy rate from 400,000 to 100,000. So there are no increases in anyone's lines other than adjusting for the actual bodies on board today and vacancy rates. And if you look on page 10 of 11 of the expenditure summary, at the top of the page, you'll see a salary and benefits reserve amount of 700,000.
Why would that reflect in there like that?
Because it hasn't been assigned. It is you have to set aside the amount in the budget for it to be there when there's a determination to make on how to spend it. But at this point, we don't know what departments, who it would go to, So it's not unusual to set aside that type of reserve that would not be expended until a plan was brought back to the board for your approval and consideration.
Is longevity figured in this salary?
Longevity would be the other adjustment that you'll see in some of the salary amounts. So if people had not received longevity previously and they've now hit that 5-year mark, you'll see some increases in the salary line items because of that. You will see increases in the benefit line items because of health insurance and the retirement system increases. Those are already factored into this. But there are no salary increases in any department's budget. If they did request increases, those were done through the expansion process. And in the last section of this booklet are the approved expansions. So the recommended expansion that the mayor has put forward. There are a handful of salary adjustments in there that were put forward, but there are no pay increases in any department's line items, not in the base. Not in the base. There are some minor salary requests for reclassifications in the expansions. So the base has adjusted. Let's say you had someone, a long-term employee leave who was making a higher salary. If the person who filled that role is making a lower salary, then that was adjusted. So we've adjusted it for people on board as of the end of April, which could cause salaries to change a little bit up or down. And then going back through and performing an analysis on the vacancy rate, looking at departments that it's not a sustainable number to have the sheriff at a vacancy rate of 400,000 when he's currently fully staffed. The 100,000, if you know, is still maybe not a possibility. If he keeps all his staff, he may not have the savings to cover that. But the 400,000 was not sustainable.
Let me ask a question, and maybe you can answer the town. How hard would it be for us to get a year-to-date on expenditures on line items and what's been spent?
We can provide that.
I mean, that helps me a lot to see the year-to-date of what was in there, what was spent. And I've got some other questions. I'll ask some more this last stuff. I know you got some more.
We've asked for that for a while, and Jennifer was actually working on it and had it all set up, and I don't know what's happened to it now. But I know John has asked you for it too.
So if we were working in the current software system, we can give you a percentage to date. Some places actually have a dashboard. I can just give you all access because you can't manipulate it, and you can go in and look at everything. That's an option. Printing it out. So in the monthly financials, we usually give you a percentage. But yeah, once our budget's input with the audit, I'm not sure if we can do that in the software today.
No, I can do that.
We can just print out all the line items and it'll tell you the percent spent.
I can pull down and put that next to the base budget if you want and provide that for 25.
Yeah, we can drill down to any detail you want, like if you want to see how many FTEs we have, how much, like we asked for the contracts, but that's kind of hard because we're trying to pull a report because it's not just contracts, it's all expenditures that fall into that line item. So we can print out an inventory of all the expenditures, and it gives you like the vendor, the amount. But actually trying to pull up the contract, yeah, we can audit, but it's.
Well, we'll be prepared to bring that contract report next year. And we can bring the budget with it actually.
I got notes wrote everywhere, so y'all bear with me finding stuff. I've been working off of this copy that you sent us, so I haven't done anything in the book, but if you go to the school system, SRO revenue of 300,000. That's that reimbursement due. All right. If you're saying yes, why is it not collected totally cost of salary and benefit?
I did not, I'm not familiar with that contract, so I can't speak to that.
We just got a copy of that contract, it's actually Friday, because I had been asking the school for a copy of the contract, because we didn't know what all it was covering and stuff like that, so we just got that contract. So we can investigate for you on that.
Then if I'm gonna move on and I'm gonna go to contract service increases. You've got administration, 20,000. What is that?
Attorneys,
Attorneys,
And it's not just our attorney, we have ongoing litigation. So if you look at, on the right of that, it has the total. So that's the total amount obligated to budget this year. So, and Russell was asking about that this morning. It's going up because we are in some litigation. And then as well contract.
It's part of that, the other lawyer where we're having to fight the rock forward.
That's correct, Commissioner Holden. It's my understanding maybe that those expenses weren't allocated to last year's budget, so we're having to do this.
okay. My next question on contracted services. This finance went up 16,000.
So we're recommending administrating, that's for the software training for all of the staff.
that actually gets you, 10 days of training with them, and, we entered into some contracts with that this year, and that training has been invaluable in helping the existing staff better learn how to use the system, and helping us also learn how to better use those features to improve efficiencies. And I really think another year of investing in those dollars will go a long way toward helping the effectiveness and efficiency of finance operations.
And I'm assuming IT went up $105,300. That was for software.
Yep, yes, sir, those are the amounts that are included in the expansion summary.
Detention went up $107,200.
That is,
That's a mix, it's their software, the logs. So the offsetting revenue is coming from the generated income from the housing of the inmates. So that's actually an offset revenue.
yeah, they've got a variety of different programs that total 97,600. It looks like in the attachment, some of it was cut off, but there's several control systems within the jail that those funds are covering, including, I think that's replacing some of the locks.
It's on the back page, it's in the sheriff department breakouts.
Like I said, I've been working on this
Yeah.
other topic. So EMS went up 27.5.
So that's, again, they're in the breakouts on the back pages.
That is actually, to increase the amount to the company that does the billings, because the billings are, costs are going up. So that's the contractual services for that company.
If the billing costs are going up, are we collecting more?
I'm not sure, so we'd have to follow up on that.
Well, I'd like to know if, since we're spending $27,000 more on collecting EMS stuff, is that cost or that product that they're collecting, is it going up?
When the EMS director was here, he explained that it's a proportionate rate and we only get like 75. They take that 25% of what we get.
Well, are they still collecting 97% of what's owed to us? Are they collecting 20% what's owed to us? Because we're paying them an extra 27.5.
Right, just that's the cost of the service, so I can reach out to him and have him do a report
I
on.
know what the cost of the service is, but I want to know, it's kind of like taxes, I want to know what percentage we're collecting.
Yeah, I can get that for you, because we collect, anywhere from, depending on the month, but anywhere from 70 to 90,000 a month on EMS revenue. As I record those. I mean, I can give you exact
Do you
percentages.
know how much is owed to us right off the top?
All that I cannot. I don't see that. I just see what's coming in. I don't see what's being billed.
Extension services. That went up from 38,000 to $382,904. Right, I'm working off of this.
Did you say extensions?
So that's what I'm,
So the 38,000 is, it's detailed in the back page as well. That's all their staff and that's a state funded. We have a portion match with those employees.
right, I understand we have a portion match, but it went up to 382,000.
Right, that's,
Part of that is the budget was inaccurate in 24. The amounts were in the salary line item rather than in contractual services. Because those NC State employees are not county employees.
I understand.
And that's where the amount was budgeted and being charged to. So there's a corresponding decrease in the salary line for the increase in the contractual services.
Okay. What about central services? Explain to me, what is central services?
Things that happen countywide.
like we do departmental insurance through the association.
Workman's comp,
One of the large increases in there are the fees that the state charges for collecting the motor vehicle tax. Those have not previously been budgeted, and so they've been recorded as an expense with no appropriation.
You may keep going, or you may give somebody else a piece.
So I just want to just share one thing on the back on the extension. The contract, if you look, there's an amount that's a reduction in salary and benefits that's equal to the increase in contractual services in the base. So that's just a realignment of appropriately expending those in the proper category.
Like I would do. You may keep going unless somebody else. Okay.
you're on a roll, keep going.
On a roll. See, I do my homework most of the time. On the foreclosure fees. They went from 75,000 down to 5,000. Does that mean, what does that mean? Are we not pursuing? Tell me what that means going down from 75,000 to 5,000. Could it be changing attorneys that this attorney hadn't? What does that mean?
I'm trying to see what page you're on as far as.
I'm working off of the old,
You're on the revenue page.
I'm on page 1 of 5 of this, what I had to work off of this week.
So as we've been looking at, as we've been doing the audits and looking at how things should be posted. There have been amounts previously in that fees line item that were not the fees, but the actual taxes themselves. So when you do the foreclosure sale, the back taxes should go in the taxes line, and whatever fees are associated with the foreclosure should go in the fees line. So that is more accurately reflecting what should be recorded in that line. And in essence, the actual back taxes that are collected have been moved up into either the current levy or the prior levy.
John, which line is that?
It is on page 1 of 5. It's the top of the page. It says foreclosure fees.
How long has that been going?
Quite some time.
I'll just say for the record, commissioners, I was just handed the delinquent taxes a month ago.
Well, that's what I said. Was that because we changed attorneys or what was creating?
No, it's more accurate accounting
More accurate account?
based on now having looked at fiscal years 22 and 23 and what should be reported in those lines and what is being reported in those lines.
I wasn't trying to get you.
That's okay.
I just see it as a heck of a decrease.
Sure.
So, moving on, we're done the RSO officers. Building permits, fees and inspections. Why the drop?
They had the big solar farm this year.
I'm sorry?
They had the big 400-acre solar farm permit this year. So they accounted for that last year, but this is just their estimate, and it's a conservative estimate in the numbers. I think since January, we've had 100 home permits. So it's, you know, what the market is, and our estimates are always conservative. So if you overestimate your revenue, then you have a problem because you go to spend it. So generally speaking, we try to be conservative in the revenue estimates and generous in the project. So the budget's a little heftier on the projects and the costs, but under on the revenue, so that your budget's always going to be a best scenario. And I think that's where it's real important to understand the premise of the budget. It's not like your personal checking account, right? We don't have like little pools of money all over. We have a general disbursement to cover the outlays through finance. And so if you don't, like say you have $1,000 postage, I don't mail, that department doesn't mail anything. $1,000 is budgeted this year, but when you go to next year, that money, you start a new budget, that doesn't carry over. They don't generally use that unless there's, you know, going through the process. If they have to cover something in the department, they might realign that. But I think that's a misconception. A lot of people think, oh, we're spending $42 million this year. No, that's budgeted. The actuals, when you look at the actuals, you know, last couple of years, we haven't touched the reserves a lot, but they budgeted $3 million in reserve use. So I think it's important to know where you sit in the actuals, and that's why the audit's so critical. We're hoping to work through those numbers to know exactly where we sit. It's hard to do that when you're not caught up. I don't know if you have anything on that,
And
Brian?
I would just say that some of these revenues, like if you look on that same page, court facilities fees, you'll see there's a decrease there. The amount that's been budgeted for court facility fees has just been too high. So as we've gotten into really being 22 numbers almost being finalized, being much more familiar with 23, and then also looking at where things are so far for fiscal year 24, really trying to better reflect what's expected, and not, which may differ from what has been in the budget historically.
Would that be basically the same thing for the concealed weapon permits? It went from 30,000 down. 36,000 original budget.
That might be a better question for the sheriff.
Yeah, I think they've all changed on that.
Don't have to buy a permit. That would be, if you find out the full violation and fees and indirect costs have this violation and fees. Wait a
There's not been anything budgeted there or anything collected on that line item. And the indirect cost, that's just I'll have to double check on that number. That's just a small decrease of $1,300.
Still, thank you.
Yeah.
I would think that stuff would be going up.
It may be, but our estimates gotta be.
Everything's listed. Go Square. You estimated 60,000. You think it's gonna stay at 60,000?
That's the information that we're doing.
That's the information you're going.
It's all right. So we missed out on revenues during this period.
Ross, well, it didn't pull up.
And I think, you know, the re-energizing of that is we're gonna try to find some new tenants and use that space more collaboratively.
US Marshal Services, you got a big increase, that's big.
That's the sheriff. So the departments work with John to put those estimates.
The sheriff's renegotiated his contract with both the US Marshals and the state who handles the misdemeanors. And based on those revised rates and the expected number of residents incarcerated, that's what the forecasted number is for this year. And based on what we're seeing in fiscal year 24 so far, those collections are running ahead of budget. So that estimate does seem realistic. Now, if something were to change on the contract, but so far, the revenue flow for fiscal year 24 is very strong.
Where have we got money? Interest on investments,
Well, you have a fund balance of almost $20 million, or $15 million, and as that money sits, it's being invested. Most of your money is with the North Carolina Capital Management Trust. And interest rates have gone up over the past several years. So it's a combination of larger balances because we worked to get a lot of money that was owed the county, particularly lottery funds that were sitting as estates that had not been drawn down. So as we've gotten more of those monies back in the county's coffers, that's increased the amount of investments and really fortunate for just to increase interest rates.
and we already received $143,000 in interest from those investments. Is that correct? What I'm looking at here?
Well, it looks at an estimate of 150,000 for next year, which is up about 143,000. And that's probably an area where we can do a little sharpening of the pencil to see where we think if there's any budget increase.
I don't think the amount of money you're talking about, your investments you would be collecting for.
You know, it's hard with municipal investment, because if they're AAA rated, you'd be surprised the return is minuscule. Like 5-6 years ago, I got like 0.8%. So you have like $20 million and get a check for like 5,000. It's not like our personal investment. They have to invest with, they're restricted on the municipal side.
Looks like it need to be invested with somebody else.
Well, you're not allowed to do that under the Finance Act, so.
But we can look at and bring back some of the details on the outstanding balances as well as what the interest rates have been.
Looking at the appropriated fund balance. Next. So. Never mind, but. All right, that's all I got right at the moment. Somebody else. Just a second, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of. Yes. Mr. County Manager, looking back at your presentation on the projected fund balance. Total fund balance and unassigned fund balance, for this year, we think, I guess. Unassigned is more than 6 million, am I reading that right, Jonathan?
Yes, sir.
18%. And the state recommends a minimum of 8.
No, it does not recommend the minimum. That is a myth. They have been working, they have been working very hard to stop. They have requested entities to stop saying they recommend a minimum because they do not.
What are the state municipal directors funding? We should have 3 months operating. So in California, it's probably municipalities go away for it. 2 months cash on hand is like scary, but that's where some municipalities are at.
Okay, but that being said, we're at
approximately 18% for this year. You think we need to be at 20?
So we're trying to find a healthy balance between using the reserves we have and keeping that healthy and supporting the ongoing operations with a slight tax increase. So like if we don't use any fund balance, that makes the tax increase go up. If we use a whole lot of our fund balance and go down to about 10%, that's kind of where we've been. We haven't increased the tax rate for at least 8 years.
But how much fund balance have we actually used?
So we can tell
That's
them,
what's on the left side.
yeah, on the left side on the top,
You haven't,
Budgeted and acted.
yes.
So
So if the budget is a red number, the budget is negative, that's where you budgeted fund balance to use it and decrease it. But the actual is, if it's black, you increase the fund balance, you did not decrease it.
so the variance you actually went like on 20, the audited numbers say instead of using 2.1 million, we actually saved 3.5. So for us to not use some of that fund balance and recommend the tax increase is not healthy because there's a balance there where it's healthy and where it's not. But by not having the 22-23 audit information, the numbers are pretty accurate and the trial balances are turned in, but we don't know for sure that's what it's going to be.
how does, I know you've got the tax rate for half a dozen of social around in Canada. What kind of fund balance are those counties? Do you know?
I can double check, my guess is they're very healthy.
What is, and I know you said state says not, there's no minimum, but what is considered unhealthy in your mind, percentage wise?
I would say, and I would say anything probably below 15% for me. Now, you could possibly go a little lower because you don't have a lot of debt outstanding. And entities, that have higher levels of debt are expected to have higher levels of fund balance because you want to make sure the first thing you do is pay your debt.
Right.
And so if you had some unforeseen circumstances, you want to make sure you got enough emergency reserves to make sure you can cover it.
Okay, this, the this is 63.55, about 3.5, recommend, what's your recommendation? 65.3.
6.85. Yeah. Is the-
6.85 cent increase.
Yeah, there's too many fives and sixes in that number.
And 2 cents, not 2%, but 2 cents is for bond repayment.
Roughly, because we haven't ever captured that.
All right. So my math is right. That's 6.85 cent increase over a revenue neutral rate amounts to a little over 11% increase. That's pretty stout in my mind. Pretty stout, especially, I know we can talk about averages all day long. But when someone is saying that my value doubled, and you say, well, it doubled, then we're gonna tax it an additional 11%. Not gonna sit real well. And I know we have these expenses that we're obligated to pay. I know that. I'm just afraid that the public is not gonna be very happy with us. I've said my piece, but go ahead.
Well, thank you. Well, I don't, I heard a lot today and I disagree and I'm gonna be foul with the 6.85% increase because, I understand that the revaluation is saying that I heard is that Acre Lane and Castle County have ran up to $33,000. It's not Acre Lane in Castle County worth $33,000. I'm supposed to say right here and tell you, I don't agree with that. This is just that. I had Acre Lane, they got $60,000 on it. Ain't no way. I'm willing to sell it. I'm ready to sell it. Give me 6, I'm on. let go, you know. If these people here in Castle County is on fixed income, most of them really got the right. And tobacco, pounds and tobacco have gone. They don't have no other income. And this is something we got to look at. We can't look at what some of our neighbor counties doing too much because we don't have tax base. Taxpayer run this county pretty much, and you know, I just can't agree with this, what I see. And I'm gonna be fat with it because I just don't think this will work with folks who don't work with me, you know, it's gonna be fat with you. I can't see that kind of influence. You know, I know people's got to pay tax, I know the county got to have service here. But somehow, years ago, we went back and brought everybody that was low paid up to 90%. We did, it cost the county, but we did, it made people sad. And, you know, and I heard something about a merit raise that some people, I was listening to what Rose said about this merit money about merit raise. I don't agree too much with merit raise. You know, I know people work hard and they need pay. But in the past, the merit raise didn't go away. Not what the county went, but it wasn't truly right. And that's how I feel about this. I just don't think we can afford to go 6.8% tax increase.
Jeffrey, that was 90% of the minimum.
So I know that.
We didn't just take everybody up 90.
No, we did everybody under $60,000. We just
90% of the minimum. And then I got a question, if you, because I pay taxes too, I don't pay them when I have to. But if you cut a lot of this budget, what are you gonna do about maintenance and repair? You got $1,349,106. And I know that we got leaking roofs, and we got a lot of things that we've got to fix here. If we don't, it's gonna cost the county a lot of money in the long run.
That's all
Just like
funded
it-
with fund balance.
I'm sorry,
That's all funded with fund balance.
I know where it's funded. Okay, I do.
That is not factored into the tax rate. We looked at really using, especially because of where the total fund balance is. And that it's at an acceptable level, you have the capacity to pull down funds, and capital projects are the perfect use.
If
For,
we don't fix some of this stuff,
Correct.
we may end up like Alamance County,
it's gonna cost you in the long run.
$20 million for it.
So all of that is funded with fund balance.
Okay.
Are most of your one-time expenditures with out of fund balance?
Yes.
The large ones.
No recurring expenses came out of fund balance.
I'm aware of them.
I wouldn't know, because there is possibly in the health department, they have historically budgeted fund balance because it's sometimes difficult to predict on their money, well, health department is part of the general fund. So when you look at that $4 million of fund balance, that includes almost $1 million for the health department. That is, they have budgeted that amount for several years, but they haven't needed it. So it's the, a lot of times you'll budget fund balance is kind of a margin of error. Especially where you have the state funds, to where you want to maximize use of the state funds first. And that's what they've been doing historically, is being able to maximize the state funds and not have to use county funds. So that's $1 million of that 4 million that you will likely not have to use.
One question, getting back to well, two questions. One, getting back to the salary stuff on the increases. In here it says a COLA, which is a cost of living adjustment in my recollection. Last year we gave 13.5 to 911, emergency service, sheriff department, 911. Rest of the employees get 4.5. Now, I do understand what you're talking about as far as boxcar. But the way this thing reads to me is some people are going to get raises and some are not. When some got some healthy raises last time, some didn't get as much. I understand what you're saying about the boxcar. I hear it all the time. But when you go to the grocery store, it costs the same thing without buying you buy. Next question I have is, where has the money been coming from to pay for school so far for these last 3 years?
To pay for.
Pay the payment,
School bank,
school payment,
bond repayment.
bond repayment.
It's been coming out of general fund.
Is it just paying interest or is it,
No, it started paying for,
it started paying principal
But I
in the
thought,
beginning?
no, this
It
year,
was last year.
24. 24.
but I thought you just said that we use general fund for like one-time expenditures. This is something that's going to continue to reoccur.
Prior to this year.
Well, he was asking about the capital. I don't, because debt is, in my mind, not capital. Debt service is a commitment that you use for capital, but it's an ongoing operating. So that has to be funded with recurring dollars.
So the school, the bond payments can come out of,
That's,
Out of the general fund.
so yes, you've been using that instead of doing other expenses from the taxes.
what about, and I know you weren't here then, what about when Dover was paid off? What happened, where did that money that was allocated for that payment, where did that go?
I'm not sure what.
When what was paid off?
I'm sure they did a bond and similar payment.
I think by paying that off, some of that capacity went to pay for the high school.
They paid it off early and moved the debt to that debt. But they would have to take out the full amount.
One last question from me, John. I said I was through. But looking back at these salaries, I know you said there were no salary increases included in the budget. Am I quoting you correctly? Well, what is, look like on 911?
Well, not in the base budgets. There are some salary requests in those expansion column
Well,
But not
it says base increase,
for,
77,000 on
That's-
911.
So there's 2 new FTEs. So I think there were 12 or 14 new employees requested, and until the compensation and adjustments happen to the staff you have, I felt like bringing on 12 or 15 new people is costly. But where do you put them and so those 2 positions are the 911 position we talked about.
We'll skip on down to inspections. It shows $11,282 increase in salaries there.
I think that's because he's getting a
Certification.
certification and it increased it's not a salary, it's a classification adjustment. There's another one in, the JCPC.
I mean, you got several, you got.
Emergency medical service is $14,015.
So you're not saying he's getting a raise in salary, it's a classification.
Correct. And some of them are state, like all the ones in the, extension office are state. So they're contracted and we pay the match portion. So we have a budget for that.
I guess I'm just an old dummy. But when he gets more money, whatever individual it might be, whether it's reclassification or that's a salary line.
It is, so if you're internal staff and you get a different job that pays more, it's a reclassification.
that's what I'm saying, it's that the base is adjusted for what salaries are today.
Yep.
So if you had turnover, you bring in a new person that's making more or less, we've adjusted for it. I think on 911, part of that increase was, again, we had a vacancy rate in there, and what I can do for next week is I can bring you a summary of all the vacancy rates and what they've changed too, because that accounts for a good deal of these numbers. And then on inspection, on emergency management, actually was going over that with Barry today. And there's a position that had not been properly budgeted.
Page 4 of 11, and just clarify something for me, it's still, my math is just, my math is wrong. Go to detention on the 5-day salary. There's a 10,858 decrease in that. How did the benefits take a drop of 34,251 with just a $10,000?
There's a good chance that the numbers last year weren't accurate.
So part of our process is they, John and our staff sat with every department, we went through all the, there's an inventory of the staff names, and a lot of them are gone, and a lot of them are budgeted, and so we cleaned all that up. So some of those movements are just housekeeping and doing things tidier. So this is kind of a summary of maybe like 800 times as much detail. Does that make sense? Like if you want to look at every single, you have that level of detail, but this is more of a big picture view rather than, most of the new additions are in those expansion requests, and the specific expansions are detailed in that list. But in doing the base, we went back and cleaned it up. So some of the transfers should be validated, how did those, some of that accounting that you didn't see with the done permits. But it's just been a lot of detail work to get it refined.
Like I said, the one thing I would love to see, the expenditures year to date.
True.
And there's been a lot of, especially on the salaries and on the revenues too. A revenue is a bunch of assumptions, and they are a bunch of guesses and estimates. And last year's budget was based on not having current estimates. And as we've gotten better numbers and we're getting caught up with 22 and 23 numbers, you have a better sense of what some of these numbers should be.
We will put some total parameters around that in case those numbers keep coming in. As to what you project.
Well, I would say in the projections, that's already been done. In my 30 years, I budget revenues conservatively and I budget expenditures conservatively.
And that wasn't great to you. That was just.
No, but that's what you have to do. You have to look at what you're actually getting. And, we'll use the sheriff's marshal service as a perfect example.
You basically base it off of what you got this year.
Yeah, the revenues are coming in and then we actually, Melissa got the information. Here's the rates. Here's the number of people we think we'll house. That's just pure math. With a little, little bit taken down for your numbers not accurate.
And my whole thing on that is, if those revenues are coming in considerably more than what the payment is on that, why aren't we paying extra to pay that thing on? Rather than taking, let's say you got $100,000 more dollars coming in revenue based off inmate housing. After you make your payment, you got $100,000 left. But rather than taking that money and utilizing it for something else, why don't you?
But
we use that to pay it off earlier.
excuse me, Commissioner O's, you're not using that money for something else. You're using that to cover the cost of the detention officers who are taking care of those prisoners. The revenues do not cover the cost of the jail. You're putting tax dollars into the detention. So there's the first things you have to do are make, I kind of see you've got your debt commitment built in. We could look at how much you might could save in interest, but those revenues are directly tied to the services that you have to feed them, you have to clothe them, you have to take care of them, and those costs are for that.
I'm asking that question because tonight it was presented about the cameras. It was put in there and that would be paid for by inmate revenue that was generated.
A portion of the increase.
Right, that's what we're saying.
Well, and that may have been kind of how the sheriff presented it. But that is not how it's presented in this budget, because you are getting those misdemeanor revenues, whether the sheriff does any expansions or not. So those revenues are in the base budget and are being considered not to cover those additional costs. They are first to cover the expenses that already exist, And those expansions have been considered separately and are in essence, coming out of the total pot of revenues that are available.
Then how much would actually be going towards the payment once those expenditures are paid?
For the debt payment, that we're just paying the debt payments as they are scheduled.
And I mean, you know, with recent construction, some of the interest rates on these are phenomenally low rates. So paying off debt, that's, you know, maybe 2% interest rate, it isn't probably as the same as using it for our ongoing necessary needs.
But we could look at that to see what it would cost, you know, how much is outstanding. What if you pay that off, and as you look at, developing a fund balance policy in the future. That could be one thing, if your fund balance is over whatever your target is, then here could be some of the things that you could use it for. You could use it for paying down debt, you could use it for one-time things.
And like I said, the only reason I'm trying to get answers to is clarification, because page 2 of 9 and the sheet right here. Clearly makes it above. I highlighted, the increases required by state under that says revenues offsetting this increase is inmate housing 1.2%.
And just to be fair, that list was the department head's direct input that I just put in the spreadsheet. So it's been refined and all that's been taken out, and the sheet you have in your packet is the direct request.
I don't know, it may still say that.
But, yeah,
I think it's still good.
I mean, as long as it's within the fund, we're trying to, like, what's the total picture, and that's where the prioritization.
But that's my question, is why would that extra money go toward the debt of the building versus yours?
Because we're meeting the minimum and we have far greater needs as, like, we were super healthy and had a lot of excess revenue, we'd be all over that. But as you have other priorities, vehicles, staff, it's not high up on the list compared to the needs.
I guess I was looking at it, and that's just, if I bought something and I financed it, we're gonna pay it off to the less, you know. I'm gonna incur interest on it, I'll save the money.
The interest rates are so low. It is not as $1%.
I hate to say it, but that's all I have.
No more question, too much, no, we take a little break there, so go back to the regular meeting. I mean, once we get to the defense district, you. Like you said, I don't.
Take a break. Take a break for this.
First on the agenda, public comment. Tommy Carver.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Thanks, sir.
I'm Gallagher. I live at 2440 Walters Mill Road. Just got a few quick little things I want to go through. The first thing what I handed out was, found this on the North Carolina website. Shows all the taxes from 2 years ago and last year for every county. So going by that, what I did, I underlined or circled. And it shows all the counties that did their scheduled reevaluation last year. And it shows what they went down to, since the other page shows you from the year before. So it will show you the price where they went down. As you can see, there was 2 or 3 that was 8 cents or under.
almost all of them, 90% of them dropped the value. Well, the value went up 30, 40, 50% on the land, just like here. But what they did was they lowered the tax rate like y'all are talking about, but they lowered it anywhere from 13 cents to 23 cents. There was one or two that was even a little bit higher, but I just kind of went to the middle to show how many went down, mainly 13, 14, 18 cents. So, if you look also at Alamance, I think it was, they went down 23 cents. So, to me, going by what you're showing, what you're asking for is not as much as this, but kind of what you need is pretty much falls in this line, is what they all went with. Also, as you said earlier today, manager, was that the values went up about 40%. And that's true, pretty much. But in years past, when we have markets drop, the taxes don't go down. They always stay where they're at, or the counties or the cities need a little bit more. So even when, and there's professionals saying there's gonna be a housing crash so because the house went up. Kind of like how Jeffrey's saying that he don't believe that an acre of land's worth what they're saying it's worth here. I have a feeling, just like a lot of professionals, that the value is gonna drop. Also, one other thing I did read on the internet, a lot of counties in North Carolina, Virginia, South Carolina, Tennessee is raising their fees and costs of their services to cover, especially ones that companies use, professional companies, or people that use a lot of services. You know, a lot of people don't go in and use a lot of services in the county. A lot of people use a lot of them. Or if they buy and sell a lot of houses, even if it's not a business. That's another way you could do this tax, where the taxes don't have to go up as much and hit every taxpayer. Professional companies can pay a little bit more, kind of like what y'all was talking about last time with the trash, about raising the fees up for commercial use. So you could do that for a lot of other agencies. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, the recognition. Glenn, you have anything already? Yeah. Need a motion to approve of the agenda. So moved. Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, carried. Need approval of the consent agenda, made it 13th, made it 16th, but made it 20. So, make my really good sense. So, I got a road, all in favor, say aye. All opposed, carried. But if I'm gonna read fast on that.
So we did do the budget presentation. You know, we have the meeting scheduled for the 10th. That's at 5 p.m. again. I'll let you know if that's going to be at the other facility. I'm hoping. But I don't have anything to add. I do want to share that, yeah, our tax decreased 15 cents to the budget neutral rate, which is in line with a lot of these counties. We looked at all that too, and the average county continues to have incremental increases. Outside of that, I don't have anything else to add.
Any questions for the gentleman? And manager update.
So I handed out a request from the sheriff, and I think Russell's gonna help me with this. All the minutes.
I'm sorry, I skipped the ways.
Yeah, so we have 2 items that were tabled. Number 10 had to be done before the end of May, so that doesn't need a problem. We have the waste.
They
waste, I don't want that street waste.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. How y'all doing? So last week we talked about the contract and just a little bit of an overview. The contract increased to about $181,000. That is after we got a $55,000 savings from the first time they sent us a contract. We negotiated pricing, changed locations to reduce the rate down, and it's 55,000 lower. So I also passed out a new fee schedule for you. Last time I had a typo in it, so in the one you got 2 weeks ago, had 120 per household, but it is 125. I stated that, but I noticed it was a typo, so I wanted you to have the current fee that we were proposing. Also, as we've spoke before, it is different rates for construction debris for construction companies, commercial waste, and out of county residents. So the availability fee that each household would pay would increase $1 a month, and that would go to $125 a year, where we are currently at $113. I know previously, one of the commissioners, I think it was Commissioner Dixon, asked about the sticker system. I spoke to Ashe County. They currently went a year and a half to 2 years ago to the sticker system. And I've talked to that director several times because they're kind of in a like county, and he has done it for many years. He said it does help, but all of their convenience sites, they have a county employee there all the time. So their biggest problem is enforcement. They don't have enough enforcement officers to write tickets, and they don't make the money that they thought they would on enforcement. So if we, I've had several people tell me they don't want stickers put on their cars. So if you went with window hangers on the mirror, I've searched them. They're anywhere from 50 cents to about $3 per car. So if we just come in the middle and say $2, we're looking between $38,000 and $40,000. That is about every household has 2 vehicles that they would haul the trash on. So that would be an additional expense. So I don't know if the savings would help that. We can look more into that, but it's not going to change the contract price this year. Mr. Jeffers, you had a question about the multifamily using a dumpster or having curbside pickup. So whoever the account is in, so if it is in your name, then you can take your bill to the tax office and have the availability fee taken off. We do have some people there, some people that currently do that, but it's only whoever the contract's name is in, they can have the fee taken off. So I would ask that we approve the contract. I would also ask that we could look at the fees, see if y'all want to adjust them any, and we could possibly approve the fees so that would give me time to have new signages and start posting so people would know come July 1 that the fee at the landfill is going to change for bring their trash and debris and construction stuff in. That way it gives them a good notice of time as well. If you have any questions, you want me to check on anything else, Ms. Johnson, if you got anything you'd like to add, please let me know.
Yes, sir, Mr. Keithway. Could you explain to the board that you did look at other agencies other than First Piedmont?
So First Piedmont, I even checked the mailbox today. I've checked my email, my spam to make sure somebody didn't have a late submission because it was cut off 4 weeks ago. I've reached out I had people send questions in, but nobody will send a bid in. I also have looked at if we did the hauling ourselves to reduce money, First Piedmont would increase the tipping fee, so it would not be a savings. They will not give me the actual price on the tipping fee, but they said it would go regular, so it would not be a savings.
And fellow commissioners, Mr. Keithway and I also reviewed the waste removal services agreement. It is a straightforward contract, and it does have a clause in here which requires First Piedmont to carry a commercial general liability insurance policy. It also gives the county the option to terminate the contract upon 30 days written notice if the county is dissents.
The fees, the ones that are changing or are proposed to change are all highlighted in yellow. Most of them are commercial. We do rent commercial dumpsters, like construction dumpsters to residents or construction companies that are building houses. I did change that fee of just a little bit.
Are you making money off of that?
Yes, sir, we do. We did all the BY. We have our dumpsters are at Dillard. We do make money off of that. Any questions or anything you'd like me to look up?
You're asking us to approve the contract tonight, or contract and its fees.
So I'm asking you to approve the contract. I would like to approve the fees, so that I can have time to order signs and start posting the signs at the landfill to give people a notice that July 1, the fees will change on that.
You mentioned when you were talking with First Piedmont about changing locations. What exactly?
So, one of the convenience sites used to be taken to Upper Piedmont, which is in Rougemont, Person County, near Durham County line somewhere. So we have switched into the transfer station, which is on the Gibson Road or the Annie Compton Road in Castle County. First Piedmont recently transferred the transfer station there. It is closer, so I have about $150 savings per pool by taking it there. So we switched locations and we saved about $55,000 doing that. I also talked to them about changing the hauling rate at the landfill. We're changing a little bit of our procedure to make it better for them. And they also dropped 50 cents a ton at the landfill, and that's where the $55,000 savings come in. The first contract that they give us was $55,000 more than this one.
I noticed last time when you gave us a breakdown of each site,
Yes, sir.
all of the fees are based off of mileage for them to haul, I'm guessing, because.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And it's all for hauling, and then, the tipping or the weight fee changes, depends on how much is in the box.
Well, I just noticed the Nix Road was probably the highest one, or close to the highest one.
Give me 1 second and I
recall.
will be happy to look at that. Yes, sir, the Nix Road. Nix Road is $4 more than Anderson and Cherry Grove, but before I negotiated price, Cherry Grove was almost $500. And I got it down to the same price as Anderson, because it's only a 1/10 of a mile difference. So I Googled it and got them to change locations to the transfer to get the price down to $260, because it actually decreased $80 per each pool.
So this $12 increase per household, that's just to pay that's just for the contract, correct?
That's for the contract, and then if you looked at my budget, it was contracted services. The only other thing that went up in the budget was the well monitoring. And I think it's $7,000 because the state's requiring us to increase our organic phosphate testing, and the lab says it's going up, and haven't got a significant price yet for us, but that's 30-some testing. That's what we do.
Do you have a number with that $12 per household over the whole county comes to?
Yes, sir. Give me 1 second. So can I give you what the 125 would be, or do you want the $12? Okay, so for the last couple of years, we've been going off 9,548 households, and we've been at a 97% collection rate. So I did the 125 times the number of households at the 97% collection rate is $1,157,695, sir.
This is the only contract you've gotten, correct?
Yes, sir. Same thing happened 3 years ago.
Only thing I will say to the board is just remember this. We in budget time, this is an increase on tax rate. Thank you.
And I might show now, this $12 is just dollar per month on the people that go to the dumpsters, right?
Yes, sir. So it'll be $1 a month. So currently, every household in the county, unless they have contracted services with an outside source hauler, pays $113. That you would add, we're adding $12 a year to it, so it's $125 a year.
Want to make sure. so
Yes,
everybody can understand.
And we've been at 113 for the last 3 years. We haven't been up in 3 years. We've stayed at 113 for 3 years.
Any more questions? Do we need to pass this contract? Let's get ready.
We had until July first,
Okay.
initial judges, but
Thank you.
I think Mr. Keekway. Well before then.
We'll say that First Piedmont has told me the contract's not passed and we will go to regular rates. Cause these are discounted rates, so just as long as we, get it passed by July 1, we should be okay.
Number 10 have been scratched for the. And next on the agenda will be the county manager up there.
Yeah, so I did hand this out. The sheriff is requesting, to use a piece of land behind the county landfill to build a firearms qualification range. So they'd like to build 12 shooting lanes for pistols and a qualification rifle range. This would be only for law enforcement use. It would consist of a parking area, a small building, probably a lean-to for weather conditions. They currently are going on the other side of Roxborough for all department staff to do their shooting qualification annually. And as you know, in law enforcement, we want to shoot monthly at the minimum, but currently they're just doing that when they're required. The range would be built to NRA specifications and OSHA compliant. Sheriff's not asking for any funding for this project, but they do need permission to use a portion of that property at the landfill if you choose to accommodate that. And then, of course, Russ and I spoke, and it would be good to have some kind of a formal written agreement to do that on the land.
Couple of things I'm going to question. One is, I understand about the land, the cost to build this.
So he has grants and NRA has grants, and they have ways to pay for that. The portions of grading and some of the buildings and the expenses, so it would not be county funded.
Will this be,
So I'll go ahead, I'll come in.
will the general public be able to use this?
Not at the original estimation. It's on county property. It's secured. It would be in a safe spot to do it. We do have quite a bit of land back there. It's interesting. I know in former, capacity, I've had shooting ranges the city owned. It's hard with lead. People are weird about lead and collecting lead, cleaning up lead. It's just like the landfill. Landfill is already a brown field, so we have hazard mitigation there already. But it is a convenience, so we don't have to have them drive all the way out of town, and it's a simple thing to build. It would be safe because you shouldn't have personnel or people on that property in the area that they would set it up, and they talked to our department head at the landfill and solid waste. So it's really up to you. I think it wouldn't be a difficult thing for them to get done.
One other question I got is liability costs for our insurance.
Yeah, that would be something that you'd have to ask him.
That's gonna be a big one.
Well, it's not open to the general public, so it would be some.
Yeah, I understand that, but Orange County, well, we go to Person County's use, they don't have a lane in Orange, and I think they did, but I think they discontinued to use it for whatever reason. I feel confident that the insurance is probably gonna change due to the fact.
That would be my speculation, Commissioner Rose. I was just, this was just brought to my attention, before the meeting, but we will certainly, contact Sedgwick Insurance and see what kind of impact this will have on.
I mean, Lane's not going anywhere. I'd like to have more clarification from the liability cost to, you know, I know that the lead has to be, at some point in time, has to be taken out of them burners. Can't, I mean, they get full.
Yeah.
There's several things that I would just like to have some clarification and some answers on. That's on my end.
One thing I'd like to say is, you know, I don't live far from Rockingham County Gun Club, and it's noisy. And I don't know if anybody's even talked to the people around this thing, what kind of noise level is gonna be. You may get a whole lot of kickback from adjoining property owners. And, I think something ought to be put out that where they at least get a time to voice their opinions on this, because it is noisy.
For an unincorporated county, you could have a pistol range in your yard if you choose. As a citizen.
Commissioner Holt, the county does have a shooting range ordinance in place, and we'll have to review that, see if that would apply to the sheriff's department.
I was asked to present it, so.
Well, I think, you know,
Sure.
we need to get the attorney to check on what we can do, what we can't do, and maybe have a share at the next meeting, kind of, clear on what it is.
Thank you.
We'll move on. Attorney update.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner Jeffries. I've been in communications with our county manager, the last few weeks in reference to this contract with the Animal Protection Society of the Northern Piedmont, which, controls the, animal shelter, firepower road, county road. So, reached out to one of the, board of directors today. Her name is Kim Steffen. She plans to have a meeting with the county manager on Wednesday in reference to this contract. It hasn't been updated in several years, so we just need to update this process. Get everybody. That's something we're working on. Should have an answer for you next week.
I'd like to, Scott, my understanding, just from hearsay talk, that they're trying to have this thing a new, I guess, well, I don't know the word for it, but really do not euthanize a dog or pets. That's not the way this thing's set up.
I hadn't heard that.
Well, came from a good source. So my understanding is they're shipping them out, shipping them back in, moving from different counties, guys moving them here, keep them doing that.
And my understanding is it's not lawful to take one dog from this county to another county.
What I'm saying is I'd like to know how many dogs or animals have been euthanized. If it's 0, that's gonna tell you everything you need to know on that.
So I know it's not 0 because our staff, part of our service contract is when they're euthanized, they put them in freezer and bags, and part of their duty is to take the frozen bags to the landfill. I noticed that last week. So I don't know how often I can find out if they consider the emergency.
Commissioner Holt, it's my understanding, we received limited communication. Just try to piece all the parts together, come up with a new thing.
Oh, one question I got. Any updates from the whole quarter?
On the sound system. So we were scheduled to be out of there a week ago. Their employee had some kind of misfortune. That's why I didn't reach out to you and give you a date. The owner met with us on Friday. Met with maintenance director, myself, and Jason Jensen. IT director. So they are there this week and trying to wrap it up and get it done, hoping that we have it available for next Monday. I told them we need it absolutely on the 17th to start having, we have we'll have yeah, so as soon as I see them, I thought they were doing good progress and then it just kind of stopped.
Any updates on Coach Board?
So then they should be starting today because it's been 27 days, the bricks are cured. They did not show up, so the maintenance director reached out to the contractor and nothing there tomorrow. Don't suspect that's gonna take very long to get the doors.
Yes, PTRC has received the grant that helped in casual and elements where they would do a roofing, of elderly and disabled. And I do things that they said. Not to do those things, so I don't think this is like
Yes, I'm sorry for being late. Yeah, that's much better. Okay. Okay. Next on the agenda, the upcoming event, June the 10th, 2024, the Board of Commissioners budget for the work section at 5 p.m. June the 17th, the Board of Commissioners meet at 5 p.m. to be a budget. And regular meeting here at 6:30. All right, need to close it to it.
So move.
Second. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.